Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparutade sangamata satavaraye sodavantaba munchantu satang. So this evening, the meditation retreat weekend ends tomorrow morning. So we're thinking about tomorrow. So now just observe this attitude of intuitive awareness, open attentiveness, embracing rather than focusing on one thing, this wide perspective of knowing it's like this. Looking inward, looking at the breath, especially at the state of mind, the emotion, the mood that you're experiencing at this time. It's like listening, being the puto, the knower, rather than somebody that's trying to find something. I talk about sometimes many people notice this sound of silence. I call it's not really a sound. Silence says no sound, and sound is no silence, but it's one of those puzzling things, a kind of background resonating vibration, rather high-pitched, more like an electric, scintillating, it's natural, it's not created. So this attitude of intuitive awareness, I've been emphasizing this, is this. We are so conditioned to focus on objects, to think, and to seek something to do. And this attitude of relaxed attention, observing, noticing the way it is. And so the Buddha knowing, Puto, Buddha knowing Dhamma, is aware of the thoughts or the emotions that one is experiencing, but is not grasping them. When we grasp them, when we like them or don't like them or grasp them in any way, then or try to deny them or get rid of them, then we're no longer with Puto, we're with the desire to get rid of something, analyze, criticize, the whole self, the Sakya Ditti, Silapata Paramasa, Vicikicca, the three fetters arise. Emphasizing space and consciousness, then, gives us perspective on the conditions, on thinking and seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. We have perspective, like we see things in perspective. We're not just fascinated or reacting to a particular condition. Otherwise, we tend to just react to. If it's pleasant, we want to hold on to it. If it's unpleasant, we want to get rid of it. We're caught in just reacting to the qualities of conditioned phenomena. But with intuitive awareness or mindfulness, sati sampajanya, and wisdom, panya, then this is the door, the gate to the deathless, to the amatassa Torah, the gate to the deathless, to Dhamma, amatta Dhamma. Dhamma has no beginning or end, it has no form, no limitation, no boundary. But we can know Dhamma through awareness, through mindfulness and wisdom. Now we've talked about the Noble Truths. Yesterday it was a reflection on, or this morning was on the Nirodha, the third Noble Truth. The fourth Noble Truth is with right understanding, Samaditi, the Eightfold Path, from seeing the cessation of suffering through the third Noble Truth, then there's establishing Samaditi, right understanding, Samma Sangapo, right intention or attitude. And that also affects right action, right speech, right livelihood, and right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. So it's eightfold, it's called the Eightfold Path. But it isn't like steps. It's folds. It's simultaneous. They work together. When there's right understanding, then there's right intention, and there's right action, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Samma samadhi. So sometimes they translate right, but I've heard it like samaditi in the Four Noble Truths context is like perfect understanding, because it's a perfection, it's understanding from the amatta Dhamma, from the position of Buddha, rather than understanding from the brain, kind of treasuring the intellectual aspects of Buddha's teaching. Right understanding or perfect understanding, it is perfect, there's no flaw in it, because it's seen through wisdom rather than through conditioned perceptions, value judgments, cultural biases, religious biases. Now the definition of a religion is that which connects you to ultimate reality. Whether it's Christianity or Islam or Buddhism, the purpose of any religion is in itself, its purpose, ultimate purpose is the way, is the door to the deathless, to ultimate truth. Whatever that religion calls ultimate reality varies, and then we argue about whether there's a God or not. Or the Muslims, they fight each other around, they both have the same deity, Allah, but then they manage to disagree on many other issues. So this is the problem of clinging to conventional forms, is we lose perspective. We lack that perspective of our own kind of emotional, personal reactions to experience, to life. With right understanding, samadhi, we can be aware, we have awareness if we feel angry or offended by what somebody says, we still feel it. We know what's, but we're no longer attached to it. Luang Por Chah was once asked if he still experienced anger, and he says he does, but he says he doesn't attach to it. So if somebody kicks you in the leg, you feel it. If you're an arahant, you're not dead, and you're not a zombie. You feel, and then the vipaka karma, resultant karma, is to maybe feel anger or the arising of aversion, but there's an awareness, because sati sampajanya allows us to have that perspective of the arising and ceasing of a phenomenon. And then the insight, the statement there is the Eightfold Path, the way to live without creating suffering. And the Bhatipata is the Pali word bhavana, or cultivating it, developing it in your life. And so that means whether you're in the formal monastic sangha or a lay person, this cultivation of mindfulness, of awareness, of wisdom, it's not dependent upon the forms anymore or traditions, but it's available to all of us. So we take into account the conditions we're living in, the people we live with, the kind of work we do, the responsibilities we have. These are seen in terms of, not in terms of personal liking or disliking or creating problems around them, just recognizing, accepting that one's life is like this, the relationships and families are like this, the relationship, the problems at the workplace, the difficulties with authority or with employees or with bureaucracy or traffic jams in Melbourne or whatever are like this. It's the way, kind of this perspective on it. It is what it is, but we're not creating suffering around the way life happens to manifest for us. Now the reminder to oneself, you can do this wherever you are, Paccuppanna Dhamma, here and now. And this is reality. This moment here and now is like this. And we see it in terms of a time concept as a moment. I mean, it's not very long. But as you begin to cultivate mindfulness as the way, samadhi, some right understanding, then you're experiencing akalika Dhamma, akaliko, timelessness, which you can't conceive of with the thinking process. The thinking process is all about time, past, present, future, and the commitment to time-bound conditions as the real world or reality for us. But as we cultivate, as we bhavana or cultivate the Eightfold Path in daily life, then we begin to recognize or realize timelessness. But it does take this determination too, because we forget, we get our vipaka karma, our personality, the pressures of life, the kind of character that one has manifests, and we easily become taken over, grasp it, or reject it accordingly. But as we develop more confidence in Putto, in awareness of it, then we have like a connected mind. Mindfulness isn't. It's not one moment and then you connect one moment with the next. It's the letting go of the belief in time to see in perspective the time-bound conditions, because that's what the body is a time-bound condition. It was born, grows up, gets old and dies. The breath, the body is breathing, inhaling, conditions exhaling. The feelings and sensations in the body are still pleasurable, neutral, and painful ones. This is the nature of these conditions. But the knowing of impermanence and non-self means that we can bear with, we can endure, we can not make problems around the Vedana, the feelings of pleasure and pain. Usually we're totally unaware of neutral sensation. Usually we become aware when the physical sensations, sensory, the senses are being pleased or pleasant, or they're being painful. But much of our, just like physical experience, is neither pleasant nor painful, but it's still feeling, like Vedana, feeling. So in body contemplation, you're aware of just the way your clothes touch your skin. When you notice, you're aware of unless the belt is too tight or something painful about what you're wearing. But most of us don't, if it's not uncomfortable, we never notice neither pleasure nor painful Vedana or feeling. But we can pay attention to it, just like we're including it in the conditioned realm. That conditioned phenomena has these feelings, these qualities, pleasurable, neutral, and painful. And the knowing, isn't it, this awareness of neutral sensation, it doesn't arouse Sakya Ditti so much. It's not like, I really like my neutral sensations, where we do get, we long to have the pleasurable ones, the pleasant bodily sensations. And we worry that we might experience, or we don't like the unpleasant, painful ones. So, as we become more aware of, say, neutral, this physical sensation, like one hand touching the other, or just the sensation of just the body sitting on the mat, or your clothes touching your skin, or whatever, you're moving towards more equanimity, because it isn't arousing pleasure or pain. So these kind of body sweeping practices, where you go through the sensation of the body from top of the head to the bottom of the feet and back, is the body really likes that kind of attention. We begin to notice parts of our body that we don't bother to notice unless they're painful or pleasurable. But certainly, it's not, the neutral sensation can be known. It's not like mystical or theoretical. It's very obvious if you pay attention to it. Pleasure and pain, it grabs our attention. We like that and want to keep it. Arouses kama danha and bhava, and painful sensation, physical sensation, is vibhava danha. We want to get rid of it. But notice that this awareness of Vedana, it isn't feeling, it's not pleasurable nor painful nor neutral, it's not a sensation, it's the ability to observe, this puto, observing conditioned phenomena in perspective, from the pure awareness rather than from personal conditioning, personal habits. So many probably in Australia they do this. There's in teaching mindfulness practices to deal with people that suffer from chronic pain. Has been quite effective in hospitals and in treating people that have chronic pain, not just that you can't just get rid of through aspirin or paracetamol or anything like that. You've got to live with a continuous unpleasant sensation. And I've known people that suffer from chronic pain who developed awareness they still feel, so pain is pain, no matter what, whether you're mindful of it or not. But there's the aversion to the pain is the first noble truth, where the pain in the body arises through conditions, through illness, through accidents or whatnot. But the body is a sensory condition, so it's going to feel something. And that's its nature. But our relationship to it changes from seeing the pain as something I don't want to get rid of, and try to take medicines and narcotics or whatever to stop the feeling, the sensations of pain, or to reduce them. Or with mindfulness, it's not about running away from it, but not creating aversion, not creating suffering around pain. And so this is the wisdom faculty operating, because there's the two. There's the actual sensation, and there's the aversion to it. With mindfulness, sati sampajanya, then we can accept, we can bear with pain, conditions, unpleasant conditions, negative situations. These are part of this realm, the negative side of it, the painful side of it, the dark side of it. This we can endure. What we can endure is our aversion, our wanting to get rid of it, and our desire to experience only pleasurable sensations, high sensations. And this you can investigate for your own insight, in regards to physical painful situations that you find yourself in. I've never experienced chronic pain, so I can't speak from experience. But I know people that have that, and sometimes, I've met people who develop mindfulness and wisdom in regards to chronic pain for many years, and you would never know that they're in pain. They have a kind of bright radiance to them. And so, I asked one, and this was in England, and I said, you look so happy, so kind of positive all the time. You don't have any more painful sensations? Oh yeah, I still have them, but I don't create aversion to them. Sammaditthi then is right understanding. It's from the insight into the first three noble truths. There is suffering. Suffering should be understood. Suffering has been understood. Three aspects to each noble truth. Notice it's the paradigm, it's the pattern, the statement, what to do, the prescription, what to do about it, and the result from doing that. And that's the three aspects to each noble truth have that kind of formula. The statement, the intellectual statement, the prescription, what to do about it, suffering, what to do about it should be understood. And that should be understood is the practice of looking at suffering, no longer just reacting to it. Recognizing dukkha, rather than seeing it in terms of wanting to get rid of it or identifying with it as some kind of personal problem. It's like this sense of anxiety or dis-ease or wanting something, wanting to get rid of something. Many people have talked to me about that they think all the time. They want to get how to stop thinking, because the idea people want to get samadhi, want to get tranquil, want to get blissed out on tranquility. I mean, we have this longing to get into a state where we're, in the terms of people smoking pot, get blissed out. And the sense of kind of, getting this incredible high, or tranquility, just if you've got an active, busy mind, or there's a lot of anxiety or problems, or just the movement of kind of refined concentration is incredibly pleasant. And then we want the pleasant. We remember having pleasant, blissful experiences, and then it creates the desire. This is where the wisdom faculty comes in. There is suffering. When we want to be tranquil and have peaceful mind, and we don't have one, then the desire to get rid of the thinking mind, the obsessive thoughts, the desire to get hold of some kind of level of samadhi that we remember experiencing, that's the noble truths again. This is where we begin to see there is suffering, should be understood. And then this is, to understand suffering, you have to accept it for what it is. You'll never understand anything if you just react to life. You'll never understand other people if you just react to them with like or dislike. It's learning to individual human beings the way they are. It's to understand them. You have to accept the way they are rather than just criticize them because they're not what you particularly approve of or like. To understand suffering, it has to be accepted for what it is. It's like this. And then this reflection, it's like this. Notice, it's just a way of thinking that stops the critical mind, because it's not a value judgment about anything, it's just noticing, a reminder to notice this is what I'm feeling right now, it's like this. Then the second noble truth, the statement, there is the cause of suffering, which is avijja, ignorance of Dhamma, and the desires that arise that we attach to. Notice the cause of suffering isn't desire. It's not. Desire is not the cause of suffering, it's ignorance. And desire, and to recognize that the sense world that we're experiencing through the human body, through the senses, is a desire realm. It's the way it is. Whether, you can make value judgments about desire, but this is to recognize the kama dana, bhava dana, vibhava dana, but no longer from avijja or ignorance, but through wisdom. They are conditions that arise and cease. And this kind of knowing when there's desire to get something you don't have. So you have a memory of some previous meditation retreat where you felt very blissed out. You had wonderful insights, wonderful memories from this, and then you want to have that again. And then you recognize there's suffering, wanting to get something that you remember is dukkha, is suffering. So by recognizing that as a noble truth, then the wisdom can inform you about the nature of desire as impermanent, as anicca, as anatta. And so the statement there is the origin, there's its cause. Desire is not, or dukkha, suffering is not ultimate reality, it's not the paramattha satya, but is a noble truth. So we're putting it where in that category of a noble truth, something to learn from rather than something to try to get rid of. So then the insight, the Buddhabodhivana, is letting go of desire, which is not, and letting go sometimes, and when I've taught retreats, and people think when I'm talking about letting go, it's like getting rid of. There's an assumption that we should get rid of desires. But it's not getting rid of them, it's letting them be, leaving them alone, losing that grip, that blind grasping, either in following desire or the vipassana, trying to deny it, get rid of it, or suppress it. And what is it that knows all this? What is it in us as individual human beings that knows? It's not Sakya Ditti, it's not ego, it's not personality, it's not cultural conditioning. It's knowing, it's Bhutto Dhammo Sangho, it's Bhutang Saranang Gacchami. And these are the terms we use because they're quite useful and skillful when we're using the thinking process. We're using thinking now as guide rather than just an obsessive thinking habit. We're learning how to think, how to use our ability to think with wisdom rather than just the habitual thinking that we tend to do. Then through letting go, the practice of letting go, you have the third aspect, which is the insight. Letting go has been, I've let go, there's this letting go, it's been accomplished. So there's three aspects to each noble truth. This paradigm is a reflective one, is a statement, what to do about it, and the result of doing it. Now the the Fourth Noble Truth, the statement there is the Eightfold Path, the Majjhima Patipata. It should be cultivated or developed. Bhavana, this is, like Luang Por Chah said, this is where bhavana really begins, because in Thai language they use the word bhavana, is a Pali word for meditation. But it's the practice of the Eightfold Path. And then the insight, the Arahant has the insight, the Eightfold Path has been developed. So I remember giving a talk in Chithurst one time where I said, what is it? What kind of insights does an Arahant have? They're all looking at me, expecting some kind of. Then I'm talking about. I said, they have insight into the 12 insights into the Four Noble Truths. So there's three. Each aspect is an insight, and there's 4 truths with 3 aspects. That's 12 insights. So an individual who's had these 12 insights, we would say that was the reality of arahantship, but it's not one doesn't become a stream enter or an arahant. It's not about becoming. Because becoming it comes out of ignorance. It's about understanding. It's about letting go. It's about developing, cultivating this way of mindfulness, sati sampajanya, satipanya. So this opportunity for this weekend it's given me a chance to share what I've learned in my life as a meditator, as a bhikkhu, and it's meant to be an encouragement. And even though the way I talk it's meant to stimulate, to try to challenge just obsessive thinking and cultural conditioning, taking for granted, or just following one's own opinions and views. Because Buddhism being a convention, being a religion, being so old a religion, there's many people are identified as Buddhists, but then they're conditioned to think of themselves as Buddhists, so it's still Sakya Ditti, where the Buddha, the aim of the whole Buddhist teaching and the brilliance of it, the importance of it isn't in to just identify as being Buddhist, but in realizing Dhamma, recognizing, realizing, cultivating this Eightfold Path. It's a time where, somebody like Ajahn Chah in Thailand, he seemed to have a profound effect on many of us. Why is that? What is it that, there's many great teachers, but Luang Por Chah had his emphasis on Dhamma and Vinaya was quite important. He emphasized working together on Sangha harmony, on helping each other. So the Sangha is, when I went to stay at Wat Pah Pong, I had to join in work projects, and every day there was what they call Kor Wat, or the routine of the daily life, and it was quite busy actually, and I was longing to just go off and practice samadhi and not have to do all these other things. But the way that Luang Por Chah emphasized what they call samakhi, or togetherness, or working together, helping each other, was quite new for me, because Americans, we don't value that. It's what each one for themselves. And so it's learning you have, in the monastic tradition, with Vinaya, we all agree to live within that restraint. And then in the Sangha life, where many monks living together, we all have our preferences, our views, our particular individual characters we can be quite, we like certain ones better than others, and we don't like some at all, or we have problems with authority. Western monks tend to have more problems with authority than Thai monks, because, like speaking from the American position, you've got this kind of dysfunctional society about equality and freedom, and so you don't, you see authority as something threatening, and like a tyrant, and you've got this idea that I'm just as good as President Obama. Why should I pay respect or look to him as anything other than just another bloke, really? We might apply that to monastic life. We're all equal, Ajahn Chah and myself. But these are the attitudes that come from attaching to the idea of equality. And so authority, where people have authority over you, where there's seniority, the structure of Sangha life is based on seniority, not on wisdom, who is the wisest, but who is the most senior. So it's an impersonal thing. It's not about who's the best monk in the Sangha that we'll pay respect. We pay respect to the, and at a time, the formalities of paying respect to the most senior one. Well, this kind of structure was totally new to me, and of course I did have personal reactions to that. But then Ajahn Chah was guiding me to look at do arom, know what you're feeling, and seeing it in terms of Dhamma rather than believing it or trying to deny it, the two extremes of indulgence or suppression. So then you have this sense of equality and freedom, but now the West is plagued with political correctness. You you're free, there's free speech. You're free to say anything you want, but you can't offend anybody. So the political correctness is you've got to say things in a way that nobody's going to be offended by anything you're saying. And so it's very, this is called dysfunction. Where is, nobody's talking about samavaja or right speech, about how to use speech. What is speech for? It's for thinking, it's for communicating. And samavaja is being responsible. Well, it takes wisdom, mindfulness to have samavaja, way of using speech for communicating something, communication, for thinking in skillful ways, rather than just being habitually caught up in talking from emotional reactions, like some people just, whatever goes through their mind, they spill out through speech. So whatever goes through the mind is never, is not recognized, it just comes out through the mouth. And they tend to offend all kinds of people. But then there's the other extreme where we're afraid to say anything because we might upset somebody. But then there's samavaja, where it's learning how to use speech, how to use the English language or Thai language or the language that we're speaking, how to use it skillfully. Because it's a tool to use, it's not something to despise or to try to annihilate, but how to think, how to speak with wisdom is the challenge we all face. And then ask yourself, where are every one of us equal? Here, the bhikkhus, the lay community, where would, in taking this ideal of equality, and it's not in the forms, is it? It's not, we're all different looking, different social backgrounds, different experiences, different memories. There's no equality in sankharas, they're all different. But equality lies in what we share, which is equal, is consciousness, which is non-personal, non-cultural. So it's through this awareness, awakening, wisdom with consciousness, operating through these individual forms. Then it's cultivating the Eightfold Path, the Majjhima Patipata. Actually, when I was living at Wat Pah Pong, I kind of found it a relief to have a structure that wasn't based on ideals, but on seniority, because I was the junior monk at the end of the line of bhikkhus. There were about 22 bhikkhus, I think, at the time, at Wat Pah Pong. And I was the most junior, the new one. I had to sit at the end of the line. And then I became aware of my, the instruction on duties of junior to senior, and all that. I didn't have great problems with authority with Luang Por Chah. I admired him. You know, it was kind of an ego trip. You know, this is my teacher, he's the great master. During some of the times I had in Thailand, I'd live in branch monasteries where I didn't feel that towards the senior monk. And so when you, like, washing Ajahn Chah's feet was something, at first I didn't see the point of it. There were always so many monks rushing out when Luang Por Chah came back from BuddhaBodhivana. About, 10 or so bhikkhus would get up to wash his feet. So my mind would think, well, there's enough washing his feet, I don't have to do it. I mean, really 1 or 2 monks is enough to wash one monk's feet. This makes just common sense. And at the time I remember sitting in the dining hall, and Ajahn Chah had come back from BuddhaBodhivana, and monks would rush out. They have this area where they wash the monks' feet, and so I said, look, all these. He doesn't need that many monks to wash his feet. I'm just common sense. I don't need to do it. And then I started looking at my mind, and and then another monk would say, you should go and wash Ajahn Luang Por Chah's feet. And I think, well, there's so many already doing it, they don't need me. But there was always this negative kind of complaining, whinging mental state I was creating over this simple act. And so I began to see it in terms of a noble truth. I was suffering. I was creating suffering around this rather way of taking care of the senior monk. And I was sitting there in the dining hall complaining to myself. I didn't complain to others. But then I began to notice that this is a very unpleasant mental state. To just use common sense and then apply this critical thing to something that's basically quite all right. So the next day, once I saw it, I rushed out. I was about the 15th monk. I managed to maybe do a little bit of, I don't know if I was of any use at all, but I felt happy, a sense of joy. I wasn't sitting in the dining hall grudging this or complaining about it or looking down on it. Because that's what the dukkha is, where the actual impulse to join in on something good it's an experience of joy. It's a giving. It's no longer sitting there complaining about something. When I went to live in England, and the English are always complaining about the weather. I mean, when you greet them, they say, "Oh, it rains too much." Or you have a heat wave and they say it's too hot. And it's a kind of way of just breaking the ice, of talking, of discussing things, But it leads to this sense that then, of greeting people with complaining about the weather. Whatever the weather is. And England, of course, has a reputation for being rainy. But I'm from Seattle, Washington, which is rainier than London, by the way. and it has a very similar climate. The Pacific Northwest, where I grew up, isn't that much different in climate-wise from southern England. So then I'd hear people, living in England as an American for the first time. You hear this kind of negative, and some of the monks I was with were, it rains too much, and And when in the movies, when they always want to show that it's in England, it's usually raining. So everybody thinks the English weather isn't any good. But actually I quite liked the English climate. and I determined when I went there not to complain about it. So the result of that is I lived in England for 34 years, and most of my memories are quite pleasant. I don't think about the rainy days. I remember the beautiful spring sunshine days. England is incredibly beautiful in the springtime, especially like at Chithurst or at Amravati. And so my memory isn't of being cold and wet, but of beautiful green lawns and daffodils and spring flowers and bluebells. I mean, it's quite a positive view, memories of when I think of England. That's what comes up in terms of images rather than drizzly rain and cold, wet weather. Then in the summertime is the best time to go wandering as a Tudonga monk, to go take your alms bowl and wander through the countryside. But then it's also when the Vasa or the Pansa begins. So then we started having these winter retreats, like Chithurst and Amravati. We'd have, because the winter time, everything hibernates. It turns. There's no bluebells or daffodils. The leaves fall off the trees, and there's gray skies and it's cold. But this also is very peaceful when there's not this bubbling spring-like beauty to dazzle your eyes. It's a time for hibernation. Animals hibernate. Things go inward. So I always found talk about the English winters as being unpleasant, but actually, as a monk, I found I really enjoyed the English wintertime because it was a really good time for meditation, where you get the whole monastic community, the monks, the nuns, the novices, everybody on a kind of retreat mode. And for 3 months, usually January, February, March. So it's how you want to look at life. It's up to you how you relate to the things around you, the environment you're in, or your own body, or the society that you're living in. It became apparent that to live in England, I'd have to accept England as it is, not compare it to Thailand or America. So instead of always compare, Americans tend to always compare everything to the United States. I wouldn't do that. I decided to accept English society, English manners, English culture the way it is. It's like this. And in this I felt a sense of a non-critical acceptance of it. It is the way it is. And then, of course, it is a very nice country to live in, basically. So I didn't have any like personal or bureaucratic problems. They're very tolerant towards other religions. So I never felt prejudice or that I was regarded as inferior in any way. They seem to go out of their way to try to support other religions, because Britain is now a multicultural, multi-religious country. So learning how to think, how to relate to environment, we can, like the tendency to grumble and complain. Some people is very strong to always have this kind of complaining feeling that they don't really agree with this or like that. These, in Adhitand, I determined long ago not to complain, even though my tendency as a person is to complain. My personality is a kind of complaining one. So there's a very ironic story. I went about when I was 68 or so, or 66. I tried to go to Mount Kailash in Tibet. And this was at a time where I was invited by a group, another monk and myself, and a group from England. It was arranged, but the Chinese government at the time didn't want to give visas to Buddhist monks, because they assumed we were all sympathetic with the Dalai Lama, which we were, but we were different. We're from Thailand, not from Tibet. And anyway, it was developed. We'd wander through. We'd fly to Kathmandu, and then we took another plane to Simikot, which is a hill station up in the northern part of Nepal, along the Tibetan border. And then we hiked in from Simikot about 4 or 5 days to the Tibetan border along the northern Nepal area called the Humla district. It's very beautiful, but very undeveloped. There's no roads there. It's all just trails. So there were another monk, myself, and a group of about 8 people from the UK and a few Sherpas, Tibetan or men who were very helpful indeed when you're doing this. And before I went on this tudong to Mount Kailash, I determined I wasn't going to complain about anything. So we were in Kathmandu, and we were having breakfast, and I complained about cornflakes, because in Asia they always serve cornflakes with hot milk. And hot milk makes the cornflakes all soggy, and I didn't like that, so I complained about cornflakes. So I broke my determination right off. And so we went about 4 or 5 days through the Tibetan border. We actually got into Tibet to the immigration town of Taklakot. And there they wouldn't let the other monk, the American bhikkhu, and myself continue on to Mount Kailash. We were not that far from the actual mountain itself. But we were escorted back, we were taken back in a military vehicle with armed guards, Chinese armed guards, with 2 Sherpas, and dumped on the Nepal border. And we had to walk across this bridge into Nepal. And the English element, they were the civilian element, was allowed to go on the around to Mount Kailash. So Bhikkhu Sugato and I, we had to hike from the Nepal border back to, it took about 3 days to get to this monastery in Nepal. And we had the 2 Sherpas, but they didn't have any, the only food they had with them that morning, when we had to climb this high pass, was cornflakes. I thought, this is vipaka kamma, definitely. And that's all we had to eat, and this path was quite steep. So we climbed to the peak, this pass, on cornflakes. It sounds like one of those Weetabix commercials. And then we managed. Then when we got over the pass, the Sherpas were able to, for the following days to get something to eat from villages. So then we went to this monastery, and we stayed and waited for the English contingent to return. And then we went on. We trekked back to Sumedho, the hill station, and then flew back to Kathmandu. And we stayed at the Vishwashanti Vihara in Kathmandu for a few days. And the irony of this whole story is that we're waiting. The Vishwashanti Vihara is near the airport, Kathmandu, and and Sukito and I were waiting for the taxi to come take us to the airport. And this Nepali woman comes in the room with a gift-wrapped present. It's nicely wrapped, with nice wrapping paper and satin ribbon. And so she offers this to me before I leave, and I unwrap it, and it's a box of cornflakes. This is quite funny, So now here I'm having cornflakes every morning. But sometimes the vipaka kamma, the vipaka kamma, not complaining, it was good, because my memories of those over 30 years in living in the UK, I don't have a lot of unpleasant memories or regrets or complaints about it. And in monastic life, when I washed Ajahn Chah's feet, then I really liked kind of massaging his feet or doing things for him, because I admired him. He was very inspiring. And then I spent a year at a branch monastery where the head monk wasn't inspiring. And even the Thai monks didn't like him very much. And they'd get together and complain about him. I fortunately was not that involved, but I didn't think he was a very good monk, and I didn't really want to perform my duties as a junior monk. I thought his Vinaya is not very good, and he's rather coarse. But then I began to look at that in myself, at this kind of conceit that I will only serve Ajahn Chah, but anyone lesser is not worthy of my respect. And I thought, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be a snob or have that kind of conceit about that somehow my respect is only for the very best, the top grade monks. Because the Vinaya is based on seniority, on duties from junior to senior. It's not about personal feelings or how one really feels about someone senior to you or junior to you. It's you perform these duties. So it does create this sense of harmony, of Sangha harmony, when we respect the Vinaya. And it's important to learn these things, because the American system is about equality and freedom, free speech, human rights, but it's a very competitive system. So you're into always, the idea of being a winner is held up high. Being a winner, somebody that gets things done, who gets the gold medals, and that, and then the loser is despised, rejected. So the sense of equality and freedom is ideal, but the realities that one lives in is very competitive social system, and so, but you don't have a structure to work in, because the only thing is trying to prove yourself is being able to run faster than the next one, and to be a winner. And then if you can't win, then you see yourself as inferior, or you feel lesser than somebody who wins. Or if you're a failure, that's the depths of despair. So, like in terms of Dhamma, we see the way it is. Like in terms of Bhikkhu Sangha, we have this. This is the way the Sangha is. Like here at Bodhivana, and we begin and we try to live within the restraint of the traditional Vinaya, as we learned it through Wat Pa Pong or Ajahn Chah. Then we have the encouragement to observe how we actually feel. So we're not trying to delude ourselves by attaching to the structure itself, but using the structure for reflection. Because Vinaya is really about mindfulness, learning to develop wisdom, not to take position of seniority from the ego, from the Sakyaditi level. But it's merely an impersonal structure to reflect from. So this evening is the last Dhamma talk. So I want to thank Ajahn Kalyano, and I give all my best wishes and blessings to all of you, hoping that by listening to these Dhamma reflections, that it increases your faith and confidence in being a Buddhist and in this tradition, and encouraging the actual Bhatipata practices, bhavana, to develop the wisdom that is available to us.